I'm about to teach you something important that science will never show you. You've got to learn to read what your plants are telling you. Come on back over to this bed and I'll show you what I mean.
All I have needs, I have not provided.
I wanted to examine the roots to see what was going on. These plants here in the front were not doing as well as those in the back, although I see a couple of those are not doing well. So I want to see what's going on with this bed. And one of the things I noticed is it's sending its roots out into where there was a lot of tree mulch. Now, as tree mulch breaks down and the earthworms and bacteria break it down further, it provides a rich soil. So, but look here, I don't know if you can see this. See this long? That's where it was going. So it's looking for more nutrients outside of the bed, except for this one and that one, and they didn't do well at all anyway. So that's telling me that this bed really needs a lot of amendments. Some of you seasoned gardeners might be saying, why are you even digging it up? Don't you know all you got to do is just loosen up that soil and add some compost to the top and your vegetables will grow great. Well, do you live in Central Florida? Do you have the kind of sand that we have? It just doesn't work. You have to rebuild your beds at least every 2 years. You can see, as I pointed out, that some of last year's logs are still under there, the branches, but most of that has already deteriorated, but so did my garden bed. So there's a couple of things to look out for as you're digging out your bed. If you had some plants in it, like those back there, and you notice that they're not doing well, like my poor turnips over here and my broccoli over here, I've never, ever not been able to grow broccoli. So I needed to find out what's going on. The beds, obviously, were not fertile, even though you can see there's still some remnants of logs and brush that have not completely deteriorated. And if that is what's going to build my soil, then what's going on? Well, let me draw you in closer. Do you see all these? And those right there? And they extend even into the what was the pathway, now has a pile of dirt on it. They extend all the way there. Those are feeder roots from some nearby oaks. And you want to know where they are? Watch this. Watch this. There they are, way over there. Now I thought, I do know this is a problem with my garden, and if I had any advice to new gardeners, be sure you're not anywhere near oak trees. Oak trees love leaves, and they love tree mulch, and they'll send their feeder roots right up underneath and absolutely rob your garden blind. And it has happened to me before, and I thought I was keeping up with it. So right here where you see this dollar weed, this is the edge of my garden, and I've always gone back with my shovel and just put it straight down to cut off any roots that could be coming through. But I discovered I wasn't digging out far enough. So they can be as far down as 12, 14, 16 inches. I have had to get my limb cutters to cut them off, and I have followed roots from one end of my garden all the way down to the end, and still going further on out into the yard. That's a long ways. So that's what's wrong, and I've got to really amend these beds and get them back up to par if I want to grow anything. So you see behind me, I've put logs in there. I don't fill it up with logs just because it will wash out anyway around the logs. The logs are just basically there to help the beds keep its shape for as long as 2 years. So the next step is to add some brush. which Hurricane Milton so kindly gave us as it tore through our oak trees. But you use what God's given you, and that's what we had, brush from our oak trees. Now the brush has been added and tapped down with my pitchfork. I don't want to step on it and crush it. I'm just tapping it down so it's a bit more solid. Next, I'll be adding oak leaves. Now I've added oak leaves to the bed. The next layer would normally be horse manure that's well composted. You can use cow manure, chicken manure, rabbit manure, guinea pig mulch. I call it mulch from a guinea pig farm. Those are sources that I used to use until one day my tomato plants were deformed and it messed up my garden for 2 years. And what was the culprit? It was grazon. The hay that the horses were eating had grazon in it. It passed through the horses and therefore infected my garden. So now I feel like my hands are tied to a certain degree by not adding manure, and it made a huge difference in the fertility of my garden soil. And it helped to break down everything that's underneath it. But now I have weed water, I use blood meal, earthworm compost, fish emulsion for the crops that need a lot of nitrogen. So at this point now I'm going to add back in everything that I just pulled out of this bed, and I do that with every bed that I have. I'll bury whatever vegetable, whatever plant is left of the vegetable that I was growing, and that way I'm adding back into the soil everything that I didn't eat. And it actually enriches the soil. Lots of mustard leaves on top instead of manure. Mustard leaves are supposed to deter root knot nematodes. This is not the variety that is the best as far as repelling root knot nematode or even killing them, which one variety will kill root knot nematode. But something is better than nothing. So I picked all the leaves that I know I'm not going to eat because they're not perfect. And they are now going to deteriorate underneath all of this soil that I'm going to put on top. So here's a little note to all you senior citizens. Just do what you can each day. It all adds up and it's good for you. Get out there and exercise. So this half bed is now almost done. I added the branches underneath, brush on top of that, leaves on top of that, what I call green manure on top of that. I would prefer animal manure, but I don't know where I can get any that I can trust. Then I pulled up from the, let's see if I can point right, from the pathways that had actually used to be part of the bed. I pulled that up and over, and it's now pretty much the shape that I want it to be. I'm not real picky about that right now because it's got 5 weeks before I'm going to plant in it. But now I want to amend this soil so that the amendments have time to start breaking down and become available to the new plants that I'm going to plant here. So this is wood ash in here. I need wood ash because my soil tests show that I am very low on potassium. And the way I remember potassium need is potash, P-O-T-A-S. See, it starts the same way. That's a little trick that I did for myself. And this is a mixture of amendments that I've put together based on my soil tests. 2 different kinds of soil acidifier. Soil for hydrangeas or any kind of sulfur pellets, they take a while to break down and become available to the plant. And I like that so that it continues to break down. The sulfur powder will break down pretty quick, so it will be readily available when I do plant. So here's another tip about why I use so much sulfur in my garden. The water that I water with is very alkaline. Florida has a lot of lime in its water. Don't let some salesman sell you a lot of lime because quote unquote all gardens need it. No, they don't. Lime would have been the worst thing to do for my garden. I need sulfur and a lot of it, and it needs to be able to be available to my garden over the entire season. So that's why I turned to pellets as well. Another thing that I've learned over the years is I observe my plants. When my beans start looking stressed out and they get a little bit yellow, I know they need sulfur. If they become susceptible to diseases, I know they need sulfur. And a quick sprinkling of sulfur does the trick. So some of what I'm telling you may not be scientifically proven, but sometimes the science just doesn't know what us old gardeners have observed over the years. Now you see I have sprinkled it with the sulfur powder, and if you look close here, those are the sulfur pellets. Thanks for watching. I've put together another video back to back with this one if you want to see more details on how I've worked through more of my garden. Be sure to subscribe, give it a green thumbs up, it really does help me. Thanks again for watching.
Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me.